Welcome back to the Rollup High Roller community. As always, nothing on the Rollup is to be construed as financial advice. We are just some educators in the DeFi space. Toss us a quick like, give us a share, a repost, send it to a friend who may want to watch this, and finally, give us a sub or a follow. It means the world to help support credibly neutral educational content in DeFi. We're here to educate, empower, and enrich you, and let's jump in. Welcome back. Get another Discord notification ping from our Rollup. We got our boy Pat in the building, and we are talking about storage. Someone will take a little bit, honestly, misinterpreted and there's a lack of understanding as to how all these pieces kind of come together. So excited to kind of break those down and talk about some of the interesting things happen in IBC. What's like that? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. It's never a dull moment at Jackal Labs, that's for sure. It's been a lot of building. The last few years were pretty brutal, but we're happy to be coming up on the other side of it. Outside of that, just building integrations, building outposts, exploring like AI ML integrations with teams like Morpheus, for example. We're just crushing it right now. We're having a blast and kind of bringing decentralized storage to the Cosmos ecosystem and beyond through IBC and Onchain integrations. It's pretty fun.
Let's dig into the AI ML integrations that you guys have coming around. Vitalik posted a tweet today about his thoughts on the intersection of AI and crypto. Haven't had a chance to read it yet, but what are your thoughts on the intersection of AI and crypto?
I mean, there's a lot of different intersections, right? And there's different ways that you can build decentralized applications to fit a use case like that. There's different parts of the stack that are really important. So you can think about compute is a big one where compute's expensive, and by decentralizing it and having kind of fair marketplaces where people are using their spare compute to hook into a network and earn on it while they're not using it, for example. Use cases like a cache, awesome. For things where you're looking to either just get instances so you can train AI or run different applications, it's wonderful. The other piece is storage, right? So there's vector databases, and there's also just storage of chat history or weights or kind of hitting checkpoints and making sure that the AI will remember from before, right? So it's one thing to have AI, but it's another thing to have a memory for the AI so you can kind of have continuity when you're interfacing with it. That's something that we don't really have right now in blockchain to serve a use case like that, and you'd have to kind of add centralized choke points of failure, whether that's kind of like an Amazon API or something like that, where it's not really as quote unquote decentralized if that's what you're going for at the end of the day. So early thing, lowest hanging fruit for the Jackal Protocol, we've been looking at integrations for memory of chat history and weights. The next thing that we're looking at is RAG frameworks. So this is retrieval augmented generation. And this is really cool for running lightweight purpose built AI applications that are trained on custom data. So if you have a company and you don't want to share the proprietary company information with a third party, or there's laws preventing you from doing that, so you can't use a ChatGPT API, for example, we give the ability for you to build self-custodial and private vector databases, essentially, where only the end user with the private key has access to it. So that's great for people that are kind of boxed in by regulation, but it's also great for people looking for decentralization, where you're trying to defend against things like supply chain, information and supply chain attacks, where you're cutting off AI developers from different data sets or things along those lines. So that's where we see us fitting in. But in the grand scheme of things, it's really early for kind of AI in general, not let alone blockchain meets AI. And I'm just excited to be along for the ride as we continue to develop it.
For sure. No, that gives me hope because we've seen a lot of these AI times DePIN narratives, 100x moonshot coming.
Oh, really?
I'm just thinking man, it's so early, no? We're just gotta really set the foundation, which
super important.
Yeah,
it's super important. It's one thing to market something like that, but it's another thing to do the boring cryptography work and the boring infrastructure work to make the thing that we're marketing possible, right? And for us, guys that are kind of on the bleeding edge, Morpheus, for example, I've probably mentioned them already, but we still have a long way to go before the infrastructure is even there to do something like that, right? So I'm just happy that there's teams that are kind of in it for the right reasons, do the right thing. And um, Greg said something on Twitter. So he's the founder of a cache recently, where if you see something where it's just like DePIN in bold letters or just like AI DePIN in bold letters on a landing page, I would try to stay away from that if possible. But most of the guys that are kind of in it for the right reasons, we market what we are, right? Jackal stores data, and that's what we do. Do we fall in the category of like DePIN? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, we do something really simple, and we find a place for you to put your data and make sure that it's super private with a high security posture. And that's pretty much it.
Then one thing that we're realizing in this interesting dynamic between like Cosmos and Ethereum to scale is like the different approaches, but they're all like basically Cosmos had like kind of like the horizontal approach. Each is now taking like the vertical. Now they're trying to both kind of come together and like, not like merge, but like, you know, almost like take what the other has done and try to like implement. And what's really cool is that what we've been learning about a lot about the scaling stuff is that it all comes down to data. It's like state bloat, data publishing, processing. There's all these different things that all come down to the actual like level of computer chips and compute and block size and all these different small things. And so like, I'm curious how you get about like the perspective of scaling, you know, the capacity of these distributed systems with, you know, with Jackal. Like, how does the data storage and kind of system which you've built allow for further throughput, further scale, and kind of bigger capacities for these systems?
Yeah, for sure. So there's kind of a difference between like data availability in a grand scheme of things. When people say we're data availability, it's usually just referring to the blockchain itself and how much data you can store on a blockchain. This is kind of, you'll see like Celestia, I think they're on the higher end where we're looking at like 10 megabytes. And then on the smaller end, you're looking at like 100 kilobytes, right? Or less, possibly, depending on what chain you're building on. So this is like how much data can you like fit on chain before like all the wheels falling off, essentially. So kind of figuring out a way for that to be scalable without the validators just exploding. That's a 100% a really important thing to do. What we kind of focus on at Jackal is for things that are bigger than that, right? So anything like over 10 megabytes, you got to put it somewhere. So right now the consensus in Web3 is, okay, like I guess we'll just spin up an Amazon server, an Azure server, and kind of add the centralized choke point of failure for the application that I'm building. Take a NFT marketplace, for example. The NFT marketplace takes like the metadata of the NFT, and then they jam that on chain, saying like, okay, Andy owns this NFT, and then the file associated, like the JPEG associated with that NFT, they'll put a link in there, and it's an IPFS link usually, which just means that they have a Amazon server that's like pinning to IPFS, or a centralized server somewhere that's pinning to the IPFS discovery layer and saying, look over there, that's where the NFT is. This is something that like we've kind of been focusing on, where how do we decentralize that storage layer in general to make sure that in the event that the NFT developer forgets to kind of renew his credit card, or God forbid he gets hurt or something like that, he dies, and then you have this situation where once that Amazon server expires, your NFTs are gone. Like, cue danger, right? Just absolute community implodes because of something like that. So looking at ways that we can sustainably have decentralized storage, where it's you pretty much have this ability to leverage the Jackal Protocol storage layer by integrating cross-chain. So you don't have to kind of build your blockchain for like this specific use case of storing really, really large files, but you can integrate with the Jackal Protocol via IBC or GMP, where with a simple smart contract call on any chain, you can just get access to scalable storage. So kind of our niche that we focus on is like larger files. You can think about PDFs, or we have use cases right now where we're working with a telecom company in Iowa, where they're pretty much storing like all of their user data, and they want a way that they can have a really decentralized, secure, and redundant way to store that for like an awesome price point. That's where they're looking for. On the flip side, in the Web3 space, we integrate with a lot of NFT marketplaces and stuff like that. So the way that we look at kind of data storage in general in Web3 is through that lens of where do we put all the things that can't fit on the blockchain? And let's make sure that we can create a decentralized way and an ethical way and a really high security posture and sovereign and interoperable way that you can kind of leverage that storage network locally with just a simple smart contract call. So that's how we look at it. And from a data availability perspective for like really large files, what we focus on is, this is on our roadmap, it's coming in a little bit, but the ability for smart contracts to read and write to off-chain data. So it's one thing to store something and then just retrieve it when you need it, but it's another thing to like update files with a simple smart contract call. It's kind of another thing where you're looking like large scale data availability for like really, really large files. So that's kind of where we slot in.
Is the reason that you're not able to store all these files on chain, is it just sheer size? Is that the limiting factor of the chain?
Yeah. Usually it kind of depends on a bunch of different things, right? So if you look at the validators are kind of like these purpose-built machines for compute, really, because they do a lot of computational heavy things. And then usually like the parameter for how much storage fits on the chain is set by the code, right? So I don't know if you've realized like this ordinals thing. Everyone's like ordinals right now, right? But you've noticed that the ordinals or the inscriptions have kind of like made their rounds and just taken chains down. This is because you're trying to jam like too many transactions, and these transactions are like really big because you're like taking a JPEG and just jamming it on the chain, right? And this is an issue for them, and their chains are going down specifically because the validators can't handle it. So the way that Jackal operates, and the reason why we kind of do something like this, is we have like two peer-to-peer networks. One is a validator, so they're like kind of like the police of the storage network. And then we have another peer-to-peer network, which is storage providers. So these are like machines purpose-built for storage. And they submit attestations to the validators, and the validators say, okay, you're still storing your stuff. And that's kind of how we make sure and maintain redundancy and all that stuff. So in short, that's the reason why blockchains aren't really meant to like store PDFs, right? Or like CCTV camera footage or large video files. That's why you kind of leverage an off-chain place to store it, and then you reference it on-chain using a URL or a pointer or something like that.
Right. So how does that apply then to IBC and to Cosmos with your storage outposts? How does that kind of concept translate?
Yeah. So when you look at kind of IBC and Cosmos, the reason why we built on the Cosmos tech stack is we want to kind of purpose build a blockchain for storage, and then have the ability for all other blockchains that are IBC connected to use those resources easily, right? So if you look at like other infrastructures and older infrastructures when it comes to like storage layers in general, we're going to build like this monolithic L1 style thing. Most of all of them are still proof of work chains. And then what we're going to do with that is, if you want to build an application that requires a lot of storage, you have to build it in our walled garden, our monolithic L1. We think that that's great for like a lot of different use cases, but for the majority of use cases, that's not really going to fly, because I don't want to build on top of Filecoin or Arweave or these other chains, because I want to access liquidity, or I want to build in a place that's more vibrant. So a lot of people end up building on Ethereum, and then they leverage like IPFS pinning through an Amazon server, and then that's their way around, so they can kind of have the best of both worlds. Our vision is horizontal scalability, and kind of why the reason we built on Cosmos is that you can build on Juno or Archway or Neutron or Secret Network. And if you want data storage and we build an outpost on that chain, that means that with a simple smart contract call, you can get it. And it's really, really smooth. It's really, really simple. And we use kind of IBC controller contracts, basically. So as long as we can get a message back to the Jackal chain and then update like file trees or storage accounts or storage payments, then you can easily access it from anywhere, which is pretty cool stuff at the end of the day.
That's like basically enabling then all of these different chains to use Jackal, and that's like a work in progress. How is that incoming? What's the plans? And what does that kind of like integration look like?
Yeah, so right now what we're doing is we've been working closely with the Interchain Foundation. So that's kind of like one of the Cosmos like governing bodies that exist, and they have been working like the controller contract, and we've been working really closely with them on that. Now for us, we have the contract up and running. It's working. So the next thing that we're doing is we're trying to find the perfect landing space for like an outpost like this. So whether that's on Archway or whether that's on Neutron or whether that's on Celestia, we're just doing our research and just try to figure out the best place to deploy it first. And in the end game for us is that every blockchain is going to have a Jackal Outpost where all the developers and users can just access scalable off-chain storage quite simply.
Nice. And is that able to be translated and used somehow in like non-IBC environments, or kind of what's the limitations of that?
Yeah, so we can't like really put the cart before the horse on some things because the infrastructure is not there yet. So there's some guys that are building like IBC connections to Ethereum, for example, or IBC connections to Solana or Avalanche. As soon as we get those IBC connections, we can start deploying outposts there as well. So it's either we're going to build it ourselves or we have to wait for someone else to build it. It's kind of like a matter of like when, not if for us. But the other thing is, in the event that we don't use IBC, we can also use Axelar GMP. So as long as we can get like a packet back to the Jackal protocol, that's all that really matters. So we're just kind of leveraging whatever is the best technology to do that. And whether that's IBC or GMP, it all works. Right now, we're just focusing on IBC because we're in the Cosmos and we have like 80 or 90 connected blockchains that we have to work with. So we don't want to boil the ocean all at once,
Yeah, I think Union's coming ready to do some ZK IBC EDM stuff.
Yeah, that's gonna be wild. I'm excited for that. Pretty much, yeah. As soon as we start connecting all the blockchains, I think Cosmos thesis wins too, right? There's two types of blockchains. There's ones that are Cosmos blockchain or just not IBC connected yet. So we're patiently waiting, of course.
Keyword is yet.
Yet. Exactly.
Yeah, I think bringing IBC everywhere is kind of like a motto, and I think it's I think for the better of kind of all people, all builders, all of it.
Yeah, you can go on like Rect. I don't know if you've ever been on like Rect HQ. It's like one of the tough. It's one of the worst websites, but also like the most entertaining websites of all time. But essentially, with that, like they power rank pretty much all like the DeFi hacks and almost all of our bridges, right? The beautiful thing about IBC is never lost a single dollar, and it's connected. We do billions and billions of dollars worth of volume. So it's really beautiful that we have this wonderful way that we can kind of integrate with all these blockchains and reduce like the bridge risk as much as possible. So it's just really a matter of time for us. And we think it's the best bridging technology out there by a landslide.
Yeah, I'm a believer. As we kind of come to a close, I'm curious what you guys are, of what we discussed amongst many different kind of angles and verticals, what you guys are most focused on for Q1 and into Q2 here, and any opportunities for our community to get involved.
Yeah, so for us right now, we have a roadmap that we just published a few days ago. So that's like the best place to get anything of like what we're up to internally. And we also have our every Wednesday at 2 Eastern is when we have our like town hall sessions. So if anyone wants to hop on those, that'll be wonderful. But for the rest of Q1, we got hardware wallet support going. So pretty much anyone with a hardware wallet has like this infinite USB drive that you can just rip around with, which is awesome. So that's great. And then kind of moving into the next things is we're looking at our V4 upgrade, which kind of is hopefully we're fingers crossed is like the last like major upgrade for the Jackal protocol, which enables us to do a bunch more stuff, which we're really excited about. I don't know if I can get into that right now because it's we'll be here for another 3 hours about everything going on in V4. But outside of that, it's kind of focusing on ledger compatibility is done. V4 upgrade is the next important thing. And then we have one app that's launching right now. Right now, as in like hopefully by the end of this week, which is Radiant. So cool thing about Radiant. So we have like the Jackal dashboard and Jackal Drive, which is like kind of like a private Dropbox type product. And now we have Radiant, which is this kind of non-private. It's like public publishing of information, and it's stored for 200 years in perpetuity. So you have this kind of the balance of both extremes, I guess, is the good way to put it. And then we can kind of fill in the gaps as we continue to go.
Very, very cool. Excited for that, and we'll keep on the lookout for Radiant.
All right, thoughts?
Yeah, cheers, man. Thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure. And let's bring IBC everywhere, be outposts everywhere. And keep that state load down and that data is decentralized fashion.
That's the plan. That's the plan. All right, boys. You guys take it easy.